Tetepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, and Shalom. This is Gusak Mahakeparu with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk to you about a very serious topic, which I am going to title, Is There Power in Death? And I'm going to discuss a little bit about how our ancestors saw death and the purpose of death and what they were able to accomplish. But, earlier today, I was just seeing some news broadcasts, and they were talking a little bit about how parents are deciding to homeschool their children. And another guy was talking about how he wanted to build a school for kids because they feel that the education system is failing people, failing the students, and failing the parents. But it's really interesting, and these are individuals that are into the New Age movement, and they're looking for alternative ways to get out of the matrix or get off the grid, But it's interesting that when I go into these little circles of the conspiracy theory circles, or these New Age, or these or organic vegans and all that, I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what spiritual culture is about. And what they tend to do is they tend to do like the window dressing thing. They'll acquire or adopt a certain lifestyle, but it's really more so for show. Because when you start to ask them questions, or when I start to ask them questions, to get really into the nuts and bolts of like what their core beliefs are, what do they practice on a daily basis, I find a lot of things lacking. And there was one individual who has a big spiritual following. I think it was in the Midwest somewhere, and him and I talked on the phone. And one of the first questions I asked him, I said, "Well, do you use divination? Do you practice divination?" He goes, "Oh no, we don't do that." So in my mind, if you're not a diviner, or if you're not practicing divination, so what are you really doing then? You're not really following spiritual culture, because most religions, if you research them, from Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, is that they always talk about their holy scriptures and their holy book, and they read that, and they believe that the book is inspired by God or written by God. So in our ancient culture, we knew that oracles were a way of communicating with God. So why wouldn't you adapt that as part of your spiritual life? So it's again going back to this whole idea of wanting to be spiritual, but not really. So I started talking to individuals on social media about this whole idea of these families homeschooling their children, or individuals wanting to build schools or set up some type of teaching facility throughout the country. And I said, well, that's all well and good. And they were like, so, basically I was saying, well, what are you going to teach them? And they were like, oh, we're going to teach them about the true history, and we're going to do a different type of tutoring that is not, based on maybe scores or something. But anyway, so the point is, I said, well, all you're really going to do is give your own version of a left brain institution, because the real problems with so-called schools and higher learning is not so much what they're teaching, because the way that that too, but the way that they're designed overall, they're designed to fail, and it's funny how we call them higher institutions, because when I went through college, I couldn't deal with it, because I saw right away that there were just problems, and I wasn't conscious enough, or spiritually elevated enough to identify the problem. I just knew that the problem was there. And that problem, again, was that all it is just regurgitating information that you have memorized or someone has passed on to you. And then your ability to articulate that information gives you your grade. And I said, this is not true wisdom. This is not true knowledge. This is not true higher learning. And this has nothing to do with learning. This is actually just to pass on information that you've been told, and you're just passing it on or demonstrating that you have committed it to memory. So, and that's the difference between when you look at Sebek or Anubis and Tahuti. Tahuti is indwelling intelligence. Tahuti is wisdom. Sebek is earthborn knowledge. He is informed. Tehuti knows. Tehuti is wisdom. So what I'm saying is that we have to understand the two and keep them apart, just for the sake of having a clear understanding of what we need to go for. So when I'm seeing these individuals who, I guess they have some, they're sincere in their efforts, but I said, all you're really going to do is just duplicate the left brain learning institutions, and you're not going to be better than them, because you can't outdo Sebek. You can't be better than Sebek at left brain thinking. And these individuals in this world today have really put together a system which is compartmentalized, which separates subjects matter to keep you from getting to the higher level of knowledge. And they've done that purposely. So I said, unless you're going to deal with the core issue of these learning institutions, which is that they're all teaching left brain knowledge, not wisdom, unless you deal with that aspect, you're not going to be doing any much more good. Or that's not even proper English, but anyway, you're not going to be doing any better. You think you'll be doing better by homeschooling your kids or building your own institution, but you're not. You're just duplicating what they did, and you're just being the overseer, and that's a different overseer. Remember what I talked about before I gave the example? I said, in these conspiracy theory arenas, what they do is they talk about how we need change. And the Hunger Games gave a really good example of this, and that movie should be a lesson. This change that they're asking for is just, it's just a shifting around of pieces on the chessboard. But it doesn't really do anything to remove the chess players and the pieces. Because yes, you can remove one president, but another president will get in there, maybe one president you like, but that president is going to keep the system going, keep the structure going. So he or her is going to become the president and then start a war and then talk about partisan politics and all that. I said, you need something that's going to totally change the system, to break it down. You've got to break it down. You've got to destroy it and then rebuild from there. There's no compromise with evil. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't say like, I'm going to go in and be the head of this university, and I'm going to like implement some new teaching techniques. No, that may be a start, but you have to look at everything that it's being done and say, we've got to throw all this out because it's not working. It's not working. And we're producing so-called intellectuals who we think are intellectuals, but they're not. They're just regurgitating information that someone else has told them. So we have to start to understand that. So I was saying to one of the guys, I said, if you want to build your own school, how are you going to teach? Do you have teachers who are schooled in integrated brain thinking? Or do they know anything about transinduction, accelerated thinking, accelerated learning based on some of the Russian experiments on learning while in trance state? And they were like, huh? So the minute you react that way, I know that you just want to redo the same system that's already out there. So what is the purpose of it? And which is what I'm saying is that you have these people in spiritual culture who come along and then they're talking about how everything is wrong with this system, but they don't really have a solution. And their only solution is to adapt window dressing by calling themselves spiritual and working with crystals or doing this and doing that. But when it gets down to the heart of it on a daily practice, they're not working with anything that's consequential that will actually make a change for the better. So I just want to throw that at you to understand that real spiritual culture takes courage. It takes looking at something, whether it be an individual like yourself or an institution or the world, and saying, this has to be broken down. There's no compromise with this. There's no shaking of hands. There's no, well, if you say you're for this policy, then I will endorse you for the election or whatever. It doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way, because you have a system that's designed to do evil, such as the universities, which is designed to suppress the third eye, suppress your ability to intuit and know things, and suppress your ability to become one with the Akashic records and to bring down wisdom and knowledge that spans across time. That's what they're there for. They're there to suppress that. In the same way that the Bible and the Quran are there to suppress or oppress the knowledge of our ancient ancestors of meditation, of trance, of spirit communication, of divination. That's what those religions are there to do in those religious institutions, which is to control and press real true knowledge and contact with God. That's what it's there for. Anyway, let's talk about this subject, which is there power in death? Now, our ancestors were not afraid of death. And many archaeologists would say that these native individuals, indigenous people, had a fixation with death, and that's not true. Because when you're a whole brain thinker, you look at life and death as one and the same. You don't separate the two, and you don't have a fear. Right now in this Western world, when a spirit appears, we're afraid. We call it a ghost. And you ever see those TV programs where they go and try to do the investigating and try to find the ghost, and they say, "Are you here, spirit? If you're here, can you knock on the door?" And then the way that the spirit is eventually exorcised or is through a Christian Bible and a cross, and then like, "I rebuke you, spirit, leave this house, leave these people." It's always a Christian Bible. How interesting. I never see him bring the Quran out. But that's just propaganda. That's just nonsense, because what they want you to do is they want you to fear death. They want you to fear the afterlife. They want you to fear the duat, the underworld, so that when you die, that fear will come at you. Because that's what happens. The beliefs that you carry with you in the living will come back and present themselves to you when you pass on. So to keep your karma and to keep you here in fourth dimensional reality and not ascend to any fifth dimensional plane or others, they need to create this fear of death, this fear of dying. And this is what the society is all about, because they create this mysticism and spookism about death, about spirits. Spirits are evil entities. They're spooky. They're scary. If you have a spirit in your room or your house, you've got to get someone in there to get it out. I'm like, no. You can communicate with the dead. You can have a relationship with the dead. If they are appearing before you or if they're in your house, it's for a reason. Why are you afraid of them? When you walk into your house and you see little bugs or cockroaches, do you freak out and get afraid? No, you don't. You say, okay, well, there's obviously people have left some food around and that's attracting these bugs and things. You look at it from an intelligent perspective. So when you walk in to a house that you just purchased or your apartment and there's a spirit in there, you're not supposed to just freak out and go, "Oh, the spirit, we're going to be in trouble. We've got to get a Ouija board. We got to do something." No, obviously there has something that has happened there prior to you coming into the picture that has caused an unrest, or the spirit wants to commune with you and speak to you in regards to something that has happened there. And if you look at it from that perspective, then things will be all right. And the reason why things sometimes get progressively worse with these spirits is, where it starts a little bit of banging here, a little bit banging here, then full apparitions, is because you've chosen to ignore it and it's trying to get your attention. But anyway, I don't want to go too much off into that. Now, one of the things that our ancestors saw was that in death, there was an opportunity to access spiritual power. And so what they saw was that, and let me put it this way, in situations like death and extreme trauma or traumatic situations, stress, when you are put through that, what will happen is that you, in a lot of cases, will astral project, or consciousness will leave the physical being, physical vehicle, the body, and it can look down upon itself. So meaning that you've ever had an out-of-body experience that usually comes about through a near-death experience or some type of stress or trauma, to where the individual releases his ba-ka, whatever you want to call it, and it floats outside there, and he can actually, or he or she can actually see their physical body. And I remember as a young kid, I almost drowned in this pool. And the one thing I clearly remember is coming outside of my body, having the out-of-body experience, and seeing myself underwater, like trying to swim. And I remember this, and it was a miraculous experience. But anyway, so this is something that our higher learning institutions have not taught us, is how to release release the spirit away from the body. so that it can look back down upon itself, how to release that. And a lot of cultures, ancient cultures, really perfected that, perfected that. And you can call it your spirit, your being, your ghost, your ka, what is soul, whatever you want to call it. But certain societies were focused on doing that, and they did that pretty well. But we've lost a lot of that knowledge of how to leave the body. Certain people in the New Age movement are still carrying on that tradition, and they're still astral projecting and all that. But the point I want to get to you is this: is that what we understood very clearly, and follow me here, is, and this was actually documented by many scientists, that when a person undergoes extreme trauma to where they're near death, your essence returns to source. Okay. And let me use the word essence because I don't want to get caught up in nomenclature like spirit or Baka entity or whatever, because that's going to get confusing. But your essence leaves the body and is about to return to source, right? So that's an extreme situation of when you're like a near-death experience. Now, in that moment, when you're about to do that, right? When you connect to source, you connect to power. True, all that there is power. But you're still attached to the physical being. You've not connected to source totally, or else you will be dead, right? So in that in-between state, if you carry with you a type of objective or idea, the power you access can literally be used to funnel that power to the objective and accomplish a change in the physical realm around us. So for example, if, and I've gone through this a number of times, when you have extreme stress in your life and to where a point where you feel like you can't take it anymore, if you impregnate the spirit with an idea or objective, it has the power and capacity to fulfill that objective. You see what I'm saying? And this happens either in near death or just an environment where you're under an extreme amount of stress. Okay. And they have seen this happen with Jewish victims of the Holocaust when they thought they were faced with death. And in that moment, they wished or envisioned themselves being home with their loved ones, and miraculously they were spared from the extermination camps or whatever. And many other people have gone through this to where they've suffered some extreme pain or a car crash or near death, and thought about their loved one or thought about something, and a miraculous, what they call miracle, happened. So that is a way of accessing a type of spiritual power of accomplishing something in the physical world. Now, the ruling elite know this. They're clearly aware of this. Why? Because they've engaged in certain rituals, and these rituals use human sacrifices. So people have wondered, well, why are they using human sacrifices? Well, there's a good reason for that. And people were looking at the Mayan culture, and they were saying that a lot of these indigenous cultures were pagan, heathen, and all that because they engage in human sacrifices. Well, you have to look at it from a different perspective. You have to look at it as though there's an agreement. So the agreement is this. Who am I? I'm a spiritual being, and you're the high priest, right? There's something that needs to be done. Okay. Say we've gone through drought after drought after drought. Okay. Follow me here. Now I agree to give my life, because when I'm on that precipice, when I'm in that in-between state of my essence going to source, I am going to focus on rain coming across the land. And in sacrificing my life, I'm giving you power. You can utilize my power. The high priest can do that. So there's an agreement there. This is why they would sacrifice things like a virgin, young girl, or they would sacrifice many people, because the energy that those people would carry with them would accomplish the objective of bringing a harvest or rain or something that the tribe village needed. All right. And that's just one one thing that they were doing. There's many other things that are components of that ritual or reasons why they would have done the human sacrifices. Now, I'm not making a judgment, because remember, Tahuti tells us nothing has a quality in and of itself. But what I'm just trying to tell you is how they use that type of power, and what it did for these ancient cultures. And they did the same thing with the animal sacrifices, because there was a respect with the animal, and an asking of the animal, and literally an asking of the animal to give his life for the specific objective. Native Americans did this when they would kill the buffalo. They respected the buffalo, and they knew that the buffalo and them had an agreement. The buffalo would give his life so that they could survive. That's a whole brain way of looking at life. And it's not just separated like, I'm me, you lesser species. You're a lesser species, so I get dominion over you. That is a left brain R complex, reptilian brain thinking. Because the reptilian brain looks for power. It looks to conquer, But the right brain doesn't see that hierarchy like that of power. It's more on communal and cooperative efforts. So when I'm communing with this animal spirit and asking it to give his life to save me, there is that respect and that power that is acquired from the animal's sacrifice. And the same thing going back to the near-death experience, or the trauma. If you're going through some type of trauma and you're able to focus on the objective in your life, you can see a miracle happen. So take heart that Source, God, Netter has given us access to power during really difficult times in our lives. And whether you lose a close family member, whether your health is in trouble, or financially you're near bankrupt, think of it this way. You can use the stress that you're going through to focus on an objective to make your life better. And that in those negative things coming your way, look at it as though there's power coming to you. There's real power. As yes, it may be, as you think, an unfortunate circumstance to lose a loved one, to get informed by your doctor that you may have just, God forbid, a terminal illness or something. But understand that when something comes your way, there's power in that. And there's been many cases when doctors have said to people, hey, listen, I only give you 3 months to live. This is terminal. There's nothing we can do. We can't operate, And I've read a number of cases like that. And then the person not only goes beyond the 3 months, but they live a healthy life. And that's because that person, in hearing that news and have gone through it, has not only built up so much stress and trauma, but they've also have a faith within them that helps them to contact Source and to change things, the reality for the better, for their better. So these powers are there and waiting for us to access them. So just make sure that you're focusing on the power and not the fourth dimensional reality of pain that's coming your way. Because when you get caught up in all of that, then you start to understand that you start to erroneously understand that you are a limited being, and I can't, I'm in pain. I can't do this. I can't change the world around me, when you actually can. And collectively, if the total population of a group or people collectively focus on an objective in that high stress trauma situation, it can change the nature of reality before us. Power that they don't want us to know about. And as I said before, you have these secret societies. They are conducting these type of human sacrifices to gain power out of that individual, to manipulate and change reality. So they know the power of this, but you have to look at it from a certain perspective, and don't assign a quality to everything, saying, oh, this is bad, this is good. Just understand that everything serves to further. Now, with that said, I want to thank you for tuning in. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, or share this with friends and family. And let's get this information out there and start a revolution. Until my next broadcast, this is Kasankma Keparu and Amun Ra.